So you are at the museum, they hand you down the stone pipe, you touch, just as you're starting to reach for it, you realize this isn't a smoking pipe.
Yeah,
This is,
I know what it is.
yeah, you
I
know what it's for.
recognize it. I recognize it just at the point where I'm touching it.
Yeah.
And it almost knocks me to the ground. Like I don't know. I've had no comparable experience except for one other artifact that I touched in a museum later that maybe we'll get to at a further point. But this was the most intense of this kind of thing. And it really felt like I was being just like, I don't know. I was being put to sleep electrically in a weird way. And I resisted it enough to put the pipe down. I think if I'd held on to it even a fraction of a second later, I'd have been on the ground, you know? Like I just barely managed to put that pipe down without passing out. And then I immediately had the worst kind of flu and cold symptoms like flood me in the next 5 minutes.
Wow.
That I had to bow out for the day. Like leave the museum, go to my hotel, and I slept for I think 14 hours. And woke up okay again. But it was the most bizarre thing. But the hoopa ended up loving it. You know, of course, I reported it later to them. Like we visited Harvard, photographed all of their stuff, and most of the stuff that they wanted out is like their whole tradition is very like it's different from the Blackfoot by a long shot. Hoopa, they really surprised me. Like I'm from the West Coast. I grew up in Western Oregon, and the Hoopa are in this little valley called Trinity Valley, northern California by Eureka area, kind of, you know, redwoody area. Their Trinity River spills into the what? Klamath. Klamath that goes into the ocean. And what's very interesting there is that where the Trinity River meets the Klamath, right? You get a T intersection. The Hoopa's on the Trinity River, which is just like a mile and a half long, and that's their whole territory. It's maybe a mile and a half wide and a mile and a half long, or something like that. It's a very short thing. Okay. The Hoopa are there. Up when they hit the T, upstream from the T is Karuk, and downstream is Yurok. And the downstream feeds into the ocean, right? So the Yurok connect to the ocean. But those three tribes, the Hoopa and the Karuk and the Yurok, speak entirely different languages from entirely different language families, but practice the exact same cultural complex and ceremonies and all of that stuff. This is one of the cases that Franz Boas, the first American anthropologist, used to try to disprove that there is any connection between culture, language, and race. So in any case, they surprised me because they're they still got a lot of their culture. They still got their language. They still got their ceremonies. I experienced magic in Hoopa Valley, like serious magic, you know. And yeah, it's something else, and they're very different. Like in the old Blackfoot stories, way back in Napi era, which is like the earliest Blackfoot stories, maybe 12,000 plus years ago, the men and the women lived in separate camps. You know, and there's a story and a place here called Akipiskan, the women's buffalo jump, where it took place, where the men and women finally came together to live together here. But before that, men and women had lived in separate camps, and basically women had prepubescent boys with them, you know. But then once they hit puberty, they'd go to the men's camp, right?
I see, yeah.
And it's following, you know, kind of like ungulate type of knowledge.
Like deer?
Like the deer. In the Hoopa, it's the deer. I think here it was the bison, you know. But in the Hoopa, it's the deer, for sure. And there's a time when the deer get together for the rut. And that was the only time of year where the men and women could like live together. And so if you were not born basically as a Taurus, like late April into May, you are considered an illegitimate child in the Hoopa.
I see.
You are not conceived when men and women are supposed to be together.
Right.
And that's kind of still the case there. even though they still they live now, men and like people live with their spouses and all that jazz, you know. My experience there was that the men are very effeminate and the women are very, you know, butchy. And it's a different, and they're still like kind of talking about that stuff and in that mind zone, you know, like
yes, it's their way of life, and
it's their way of
preserved.
It is preserved. It's still going on. And we went into their old villages, like the old pit houses and stuff, where they still do their ceremonies and things. There are very important features that have gone missing from the like official, like if you look at pictures of those villages at the turn of the century compared to pictures of the villages in the 1950s or 60s, you're going to see really important things are missing. Those things are still there. They're just hidden. They're there. They're all there. Everything is still there. And there's weird things that can go on there.
Yeah, that gives us a good lead in for another chapter.
Sure.
I just feel so grateful to be able to be with you tonight and hear these stories. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. It's weird to be retelling them because it seems so fantastical, a lot of it now, you know. And I'm just like regular Blood Indian, desperate in Lethbridge, you know. Like
yes, well, they were glorious. They're glorious moments that live on still.
Yeah. yeah, it's all still part of the whole. Like those are history that have made major ripples. Like what we did, bringing that stuff back, has changed count. Like it's hard to even imagine how much it's changed the community and the people, you know. A lot. Education is totally different, I think, as a result.
Thank you so much for sharing these things. I hope we'll get to continue in a very, you know, nearby moment. I'm gonna end the recording here. We can keep talking. But thank you for sharing all of this, Ryan. So
You bet.
so grateful.
You bet.